We begin with a book reading session titled Echoes of Eternity by Ambassador Pavan Varma. Without giving too much away, this book introduces us to the essence of the Indian thought and wisdom across time. It's my great honor to introduce Ambassador Pavan Kumar Varma. He completed his graduation in history from St. Stephen's College and went on to pursue a degree in law from the University of Delhi. He then joined the Indian Foreign Services in 1976 and has held several key positions, including Press Secretary to the President of India, Spokesman for the Ministry of External Affairs, Joint Secretary for Africa, High Commissioner for India in Cyprus, the Director of the Nehru Center in London, Director General of the Indian Council for Cultural Relations, New Delhi, and Ambassador of India to Bhutan. A writer, diplomat, and SIU distinguished professor, Ambassador Varma has written over a dozen best-selling books, and as we heard before in the previous session, it now stands at 26. These books include the highly successful Krishna, the Playful Divine, the biography Ghalib, the Man, the Times, and the Havelis of Old Delhi. His widely influential book, Being Indian, The Truth About Why the 21st Century Will Be India's, has been translated into several foreign languages and has received critical acclaim. Ambassador Varma was bestowed with the honorary doctoral degree for his contribution to the fields of diplomacy, literature, culture, and aesthetics by the University of Indianapolis in 2005. He is also the only serving Indian ambassador in Bhutan to have received the Duk Thukse Award in 2012, Bhutan's highest civilian award, awarded by His Majesty the King of Bhutan. I welcome Ambassador Pavan to the stage. I can't think of a better person to moderate this session than our very own Gayatri Mendenha, who herself has a very deep interest in Indian knowledge systems. Gayatri Mendenha is an assistant professor at the Symbiosis School for Liberal Arts, Pune, where she has been teaching courses in literature, philosophy, creative writing since 2014. She has previously taught in Flame University and Jnanadeep in Pune. She has collaborated with international faculty and guest lectured at DePaul University in Chicago. She is a member of the Board of Studies for the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences at Symbiosis and chairs its subcommittee for philosophy. She is a co-convener of the International Conference on Buddhist Philosophy and Praxis. She has worked on research projects, presented papers, and published in the areas of literary studies, philosophy, and religion. She has also won an award at Symbiosis for excellence in teaching. I request both Ambassador Varma and Gayatri to please make their way onto the dais. Thank you.
All right, so I think we will begin at least I'll introduce the session. So as you all are aware, Ambassador Varma has written about the Hindu civilization. He's written about Adi Shankaracharya. But I think he felt that the time has come to now make this collection, this compendium of Indian thought across time. So this compendium spans 7,000 years, so ranging from the teachings of the Buddha to the Arthashastra. You have work by Amrita Pritam and APJ Abdul Kalam. So it's a fascinating collection and range of Indian thought across 7,000 years. The wonderful thing about the book is you pick it up, you can open to any section, any selection. There's a lovely introductory note about the particular thinker, so you can read a little bit about them and then engage with their ideas, with their thoughts. And the hope is that you, dear readers, once you purchase a copy of this book, as Ambassador Varma says, it's just meant to, Sir has arrived, so we will wait for him to join us. Welcome, sir. So I was just telling the audience a little bit about the book, spanning 7,000 years, range of Indian thought. And the fact that you can, when you pick up this book, you can just open to any selection, read a little bit about the thinker, engage with their ideas. And as Ambassador Varma writes in the book, it's just meant to whet the appetite, it's just a primer. And the hope is that each of you all will make your own journeys into this delightful world of Indian thought. So, as I was telling the audience, while you have written about the Hindu civilization, you've written about Adi Shankaracharya, you clearly felt that the time had now come to write a compendium of Indian thought. So what inspired you to do so, and what do you hope your readers to take away from it?
Thank you. Thank you, Gayatri. And let me reiterate what a pleasure it is for me here. You see, one of the problems I think modern India is facing is that many of us who may be otherwise well educated are somewhat adrift from their cultural roots. I think to be a global citizen and to be culturally rooted are not conflicting goals. For those who are legatees of a civilization which perhaps can be ranked as among the oldest in the world, with a journey of Maulik Soch, original thought, which goes back, as Gayatri says, 7,000 years and more, I find a lot of us today are not aware of this journey. And in that sense, even if they are not scholars of a particular subject or a particular phase of our history, they are not completely representative of Indian civilization. And when people are not culturally rooted, somehow the danger of mimicry, of borrowing more than what you need to preserve, becomes a real possibility. It also leads to an entire generation of extremely talented people who are photocopies of another culture rather than being confident spokespersons of their own. You have to know, if you have read Shakespeare, you have to know something about Kalidas. If you read a Western philosopher, you have to know who is Tirukural, who is Tiruvalluvar. I mean, it is considered even the fifth Veda. You have to know where the foundations of Indian thought began, what distinguishes it from others. And therefore, I felt there was a need to rediscover this culture. Let me say to you that I also came from a deracinated background. I went to St. Xavier's, then Scindia School, St. Stephen's, the Foreign Service, and therefore there was no great imperative to read either the Ramayana or the Mahabharata. I am among those who was also adrift from my own language, my own mother tongue, which happens to be Hindi. And I felt somewhere incomplete. Also, I felt there was a need to counter those who claimed to be the only repositories of knowledge of this culture and could dictate to us. If you don't know enough, you will therefore be imposed upon by others who assume that they know more than you, and therefore you will be told this is right and that is wrong. And unless you know a little, I don't think you can be a continuity in that remarkable journey of Maulik Soch, the power of original thought. And that is why I sometimes feel, Gayatri, that we produce very efficient cogs in somebody else's wheel. rather than being originators of the wheel itself, which we were at one time. There is no subject today, from philosophy to architecture, to mathematics, to astronomy, to politics, to environment, to literature, to aesthetics, to art, to culture, where we were not among the first to make a seminal contribution. Let me give you one example. There is a Western conceit that the word aesthetics itself was invented in the 17th century by a criticism written by an author from Europe. The truth is that aesthetics was part of the Natya Shastra written 600 years before the birth of Christ, consisting of 6,000 Sanskrit shlokas. And in that book, it is not a mechanical compendium of the arts. It is a meditation on art, in addition to being a compendium. And it has an entire chapter on what constitutes the artistic experience, which is really what aesthetics is about. It talks about rasa. So if you are not aware, for instance, I gave this example only, but there are so many more. I think that you are not fully representative of this great civilization. And I think we have a right to be, without xenophobia, without chauvinism, without saying, I am superior to you, but saying it confidently based on a knowledge of the past. Now that knowledge need not be that, as I said, scholarly. That's why you need a book like this, which will give you from the first written text ever in our civilizational journey, which is the Rigveda. Starting from there, this book takes you down a journey which ends with the former President Abdul Kalam. And it is a reference book. You don't have to read it from page 1 till the end. You can dip into it to see the extraordinary canvas and range, the colors that infuse that canvas, the areas which it penetrates into. And it is therefore a guide, a reference, something that you should have in order to be aware. And that's why this book.
Thank you, sir. So as you are aware, sir is also an SIU distinguished professor. So in some of your classes, you have also warned students against becoming prisoners of their milieu. So while there is cultural rootedness, we also want our students to be global citizens, able to engage with diverse perspectives. So could you tell us a little bit about?
I just said that there's no contradiction between the two. I have been a diplomat, posted across the globe, including in some of the bigger capitals. I've been in New York in our mission to the United Nations. I was in London, I was in Moscow. And I noticed that while we make good diplomats, we are very often unsure or uncertain or unaware of the entire spectrum of which we should be a representative of, which is not merely the Indian Republic, but the Indian civilization. It adds authenticity to your voice. And in that sense, you are in fact a better global citizen if you are also capable of being a more convincing spokesperson of your own civilizational heritage. One of the things that is happening today in the name of globalization is that a myth has been created of the global village, that we are all mirror images of each other. That we watch CNN, we eat, go to McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, we watch the same films, the same thing becomes viral, we watch it. All of that is true. And yet cultures are different. Cultures have an inherent opacity. I cannot be or should not attempt to be that which I am not, because I will do it both unconvincingly and also a little foolishly, if I may say. But if I am a fish in my own waters, I can swim to oceans beyond. I can swim to oceans where other waters merge, carrying the memory of the civilizational river from which I came. And that is important. As India emerges to become one of the great powers of the world, to have an entire range of the elite that is emerging in terms of educational qualifications, to be increasingly adrift from your civilization. I mean, I wrote a book on Adi Shankaracharya. Adi Shankaracharya is Hinduism's greatest thinker. And I was surprised to find that many very well-educated people in the metropolises did not know when he lived, where he was born, what he wrote about. There is a serious problem here. Gandhiji wrote his first book in Gujarati while also speaking the Queen's English. It did not make him any less a global citizen. He could meet the Viceroy dressed in clothes which were part of his heritage, as he chose to select them, and meet the Viceroy as an equal, because he was confident that what he represented is as good, without necessarily saying it is superior. So that confidence can only come when you understand that even in a globalizing world, cultures have their own importance. And when that cultural footprint begins to be erased from your memory or is not inculcated as part of your education, it takes away the impetus in you in a competitive world where opportunities are fewer. It takes away that impetus for you to go beyond the surface and learn more. And so, therefore, somewhere you become, as I said earlier, deracinated. So I think that somewhere I'm incomplete. And I don't know, I think, Gayatri, it's a malaise that is happening more today. My mother knew the Tulsidasa's Ramcharitmanas by heart. She went to a convent, so she spoke the best of English. Coming from UP, she spoke Bhojpuri. A Maulvi used to come home and she learned Urdu, the script, and a bit of Farsi. She was steeped in the folklore of her own culture and equally cognizant of the proverbs in English. She may not have had a cutting-edge degree in on the horizons of technology. But in many ways, she was a more complete citizen than some of the best products we have today. And that is a quest that has been both a passion for me and troubling me. My earlier books, if you look at them, the first was a biography of the great poet Mirza Ghalib, which was a revelation. I mean, the kind of poetic genius he exhibited. And the amazing thing, I will tell you why I wrote that book. It was published by Penguin and remains today one of their better selling books even today. I wrote it in '89. I went to one of the leading bookshops in Delhi and I asked them if they have a book on Mirza Ghalib. And they said no. It's like going to a bookshop in London and asking for a book on Yeats or Eliot and being told that they have none. But colonized societies, societies which have been colonized, which is why I'm speaking in English here. Societies which have been colonized produce ultimately citizens who have yet to erase the impact of colonization on the mind. Colonization is not only about physical subjugation. Colonization is about colonization of the mind. You may win political freedom, as you did in 1947 when the Union Jack went down and the tricolor came up. But the cultural colonization persists for much longer. The whole colonial system is about taking your language away, devaluing your culture, erasing memories of your own heritage in order for the colonial ruler to prove why he needs to rule you. So the impact of colonialism in cultural terms is far greater than perhaps its political subjugation. It continues for much longer. There are parts of West Africa with rich local languages. The Secretary General of UNESCO told me that in most of these countries, those languages have become extinct because everybody speaks French, which was the language of the colonizer. Now, a language is not merely a means of communication. It is a repository of your proverbs, of your folk tales, of your lullabies, of your civilization, of your way, of your customs, of local beliefs. When a language dies, a culture dies. So if you don't know, for instance, what are the three foundational texts of Hinduism? Who will tell me in the audience? This is my point. If you don't know that the three foundational texts of Hinduism are the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Brahma Sutra, then somewhere either your education is incomplete or your curiosity is indifferent. If you don't know that in India, from the very inception, there was not one system of philosophy. There were 6 systems of Hindu philosophy. The Sankhya, the Yoga, the Nyaya, the Vaisheshik, the Purv Mimamsa, the Uttar Mimamsa. And each of them, if you don't know, you must know, can technically be called atheist. They are not talking of God. They are not talking about divinity. Their concern is to try and find what could be the ultimate truth behind the bewildering plurality of this cosmos. सत्य क्या है? उसकी खोज थी. इसीलिए तो हम कहते हैं सत्यमेव जयते. if you don't know why that was chosen and from where and why, there is something lacking. If you do not know that from the very beginning, one of the reasons why Hindu civilization or Indian civilization, enriched later by other influences, has continued to survive in terms of antiquity, continuity, assimilation, diversity, and peaks of refinement. If you don't know the reason for it, you must go back to it and find out, because from its very inception, our civilizational journey was open, eclectic, inclusive, dialogic, and assimilative. ये तो हमारी धरोहर थी. There are three Mahavakyas, great sentences, which I have said in my lectures here. One of them is this: Udar Charitanam Vasudev Kutumbakam. If you are not aware where it was written, why it was written, how far long it was written, then you are missing out on something. It becomes a slogan to parrot. It becomes a cliche to use. It is not a message that is conveying to you with the resonance and depth it needs to. We pay lip service to the past without knowing enough of it. When I entered Parliament, right at the beginning is written Vasudev Kutumbakam. Okay, if you don't know the background, that it was written almost 6,000 years ago, at a time when people were saying just the opposite in other parts of the world. Newly established human settlements were not saying Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. They were saying only you and I and those who are part of this settlement is my family, the rest are enemies. And here our sages were saying the opposite. Udar Charitanam Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. All the three foundational texts that I mentioned to you, none of them is a monologue. Are you aware of it? The Upanishads are a dialogue. The Bhagavad Gita is a dialogue. The Brahma Sutra, remarkable aphorisms, remarkable 550 of them, so short, so compressed, in such brevity that there used to be a saying in the past that if you can reduce it even further by one letter or one syllable, it is the same pleasure as having a child in your family being born. Compressed thought, but on which thousands of pages of commentaries have been written. And in each of these commentaries, there will always be space given to the view of the opponent. Again, a dialogue. So therefore, when we said Ekam Sat Vipraha Bahuda Vadanti, which is part of this heritage, echoes of eternity, its essential meaning is the truth is one, wise people call it by different names. It was a revolutionary thought. And there are so many other examples I can give you. The Charvaks is a very interesting school of Hindu philosophy. It says the Vedas are a bunch of lies. And it proves scientifically. It's the world's first systematically argued school of materialism. जो प्रत्यक्ष है वो सत्य है. The rest is speculation. What you see is the truth. The rest is speculation done by priests to make money. 2,000 years before, 3,000, 4,000 years before Marx said religion is the opium of the masses. That is the level of original thought. But what is even more important is the Charvaks who said the Vedas, our lives are part of Hinduism. We allowed it. Buddhism and Jainism could be born in India. profound and powerful religions because India did not oppose ideological protest. It was part of the way we thought should evolve. The Tantric school has heterodox practices, different from the mainstream area. It's part of Hinduism. But in any other area, Kautilya's Arthashastra. And he writes in that book, in the first chapter, that there were before this book 9 schools of Indian political thought. So you can imagine how much thought went into an area you did not know about. Most of you here think that Machiavelli was the real originator of real politics. अरे भाई उसके 2500 पहले तो चाणक्य ने अर्थशास्त्र लिखी थी ना, lost to the world. For 2000 years, rediscovered in the 19th century, lying as a manuscript in a library in Kerala. That's what happens to colonial societies if you don't take the trouble to find your heritage. So my short point is that somewhere there is, in the midst of a lot of progress, a lot of breakthroughs in knowledge, a lot of the best of our minds competing with the best in the world, there is, without our knowing it, a growing void where the best of us are adrift from our own culture, from our own roots. And that is a gap that we must cover by our own efforts, not to impress somebody, but to be able to enrich ourselves, to add authenticity to our voice, to be able to even occasionally tell the world that what you are talking about is something that we had discussed in great detail and depth thousands of years earlier, with an open mind. And then with the coming of Islam, including the violence, destruction and proselytization that it came with, how ultimately it found, some of its adherents found a home in this soil, because after all, the civilization that was for thousands of years in existence before the coming of Islam also said, Ano Bhadraha Kritavo Yantu Vishvata, let good thoughts come to us from all directions. So some of the Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb we talk about is about assimilating these new influences. The Assyrians came, the Scythians came, the Greeks came. They became part of one mainstream, like tributaries flowing into a great river. The point is that if we don't know about Kalidas, we don't know about Ghalib also. I'm not making a fetish of it, but I'm saying कुछ तो कोशिश करनी चाहिए. कुछ तो कोशिश करनी चाहिए. I wrote a book on Krishna. There are thousands of manuscripts and treatises lying in the Braj area which have not even been translated. In recent times, the University of California and Berkeley wanted a professor in Telugu with original research. They asked India, they could not get one. Our languages are dying, while we continue to speak bad English. My point is not against English. I write in English myself. But it should not be at the cost of the hinta, the sense of inferiority attached to our own languages. English should not be, the fluency and accent with which you speak it, should not be your only pass to social status. We have to re-examine ourselves, look at ourselves in the mirror. People speak their own languages proudly. Here, if you ask somebody a question in Hindi, he replies in English so that you don't think I don't know English. ये हालत हो गई. So these are things we need to work upon. And it's a growing gap. That's why I keep on writing these books. I mean, the great ancient Hindu civilization. What is the notion of dharma, artha, kama, moksha? Why is it that India does not have the 10 commandments? Except in the Christian faith, which is important in India, but as a mainstream thought. Because we have one of the most courageous notions of dharma. How many of you know about it? What is dharma in the Indian context? How many of you know that perhaps in our worldview we have one of the most realistically balanced worldview? Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. What does it mean? Why do we have a treatise called the Kama Sutra? Why do we have a treatise called the Artha Shastra? Illiterate people will say to you, oh, you have 33 lakh deities. Ishwar, Bhagwan, har jagah murti. How do you harmonize the nirguna notion of Brahma without any attributes with so many Ishwars, the Sagun, Nirgun and Sagun? But it's harmonized totally because both are aspects of the same. And by the way, this thought evolved philosophically from Shankaracharya's Advait, non-duality, to Ramanujacharya's Vishisht Advait, to Nimbarkacharya's Dvait Advait, to Madhavacharya, Vallabhacharya. Read some of their writings to know how this evolved for Tulsidas to say in Ramcharitmanas in the 16th century as part of the Bhakti movement, Aguna Saguna Doi Brahma Swarupa, Agatha Agad Anadi Anupa. Agun, Nirgun and Sagun are two aspects of that same Brahma. Aguna Saguna Doi Brahma Swarupa, Agatha Agad Anadi Anupa. For the Bhakti movement, to worship a tree, a stone, was like worshipping that ultimate reality which pervades the cosmos as a pulsating consciousness without any attributes called Nirgun. There was no difference. Why did Hinduism survive in India after the Islamic invasion? When in a country like Indonesia, which was almost entirely Buddhist or Hindu, it became entirely Islamic after the invasion. Why? And without necessarily eradicating the presence of Islam, which is one of the great religions of our country also. It was because of the Bhakti movement. The most remarkable movement I can say in the world of ideas, perhaps in the world. 600 years long. From Tukaram to Chandidas to Vidyapati to Surdas to Govindas to Tulsidas to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Basavanna to Allama Prabhu to Mirabai, to Andal, in their own languages, to Jaidev, taking Hinduism away from the Sanskrit cloisters to the masses, where Kirtan was the ultimate bhakti, cutting across caste lines, gender lines. Are you aware of this period? The richness of the poetry. आपके रोंगटे खड़े हो जाएंगे वो पोइट्री सुनने में. With so much devotion, so much sincerity, so much passion. तो कुछ तो मालूम होना चाहिए ना. That's why this book.
Right. So I had a bag full of very interesting questions, but I think in the process of Ambassador Varma has responded to most of those. But nonetheless, at a time when we as academicians are called to contribute meaningfully to our respective disciplines in terms of research, I wanted to ask him about the audacity of thought, cerebral interrogation. He speaks about the originality of thought, the power of original thought, and the importance of philosophical rumination. So while we talk about research, we need to also give time for philosophical rumination. So I had wanted to discuss that with him. I had also wanted to end with this question, but I don't think we'll have time for it. That's a Okay. So of course
I promise you I'll give a short answer.
Right.
Ask the question.
I will. Okay. So while the vast majority of the texts, and the other thing in terms of audacity of thought, while we have wonderful thinkers and writers in this compendium, we also have writers in the audience who embody this, embody audacity of thought even at great personal risk. So I thought I should mention that. So, but nonetheless, the question that I thought we would end with, while the vast majority are selections by men, there's a wonderful section on the Bhakti movement, and you speak about the women poets, and you talk about irreverence and rebellion. So I think I'd like you to tell us a little bit about that.
I mean, it's not as if the women, I would have liked to select more in this compendium or anthology, but we don't have independent voices, but I don't doubt for a moment their contribution. Don't forget that as per lore, and as mentioned in one of our Upanishads, in the Darbar of Raja Janak, the presiding guru was Guru Yagnivalkya. And there was Maitreyi, who dared to ask him a question, and even though he wanted her to keep quiet, she refused to do so. We have that tradition. But somehow that separately so many women voices are difficult to find until the Bhakti movement. Then you have powerful voices. Powerful. They are there as selections in my book, or in my book Great Hindu Civilization also. Mirabai, who defied all norms. Andal defied all norms in Tamil. And many more who I have mentioned. And of course, later we have voices of importance. I don't see this only as a question of gender compartmentalization. Yes, there was male domination in our country, not originally, but certainly for the last 2,500 years. But women were given an equal role at least in the 4,000, 5,000 years before that as important contributors. But one of the problems is that no one knows who is the author of the Upanishads. There are 13 principal Upanishads and many more. Nowhere is an author mentioned. So it could be male, it could be female. So that is the issue. But I really think that powerful voices of women influence thought very strongly.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Varma. Thank you all for being a lovely audience. I will now hand over to Dr. Manjari.
Thank you, Ambassador Varma, for writing this book and for this lovely conversation, which compels us to reflect on the idea of Maulik thought, and especially in the context of the Indian civilization and worldview.